The night New York took me back, the river smelled like copper and rain. I stood on the pedestrian span of the Williamsburg Bridge with a grocery bag cutting a thin red seam across my wrist and 3 tiny knitted beanies peeking from the top like signal flags. The wind barreled down the East River and folded my breath into thin glass. In the noise of the city, a particular quiet formed around us, the kind that lets you hear your own history, like it is still calling your name. I am Eden Anson, and I came home with 3 children and a promise to myself I would not teach them to be afraid of the places that once taught me to leave. You might ask, because I ask myself still, why come back to the city that believed the worst version of me? Why bring 3 small hearts into a machine that bills compassion by the minute? I could tell you the schools are better. That my aunt's spare room in Ridgewood materialized at the exact second we ran out of space. Upstate. That Brooklyn flea markets pay honest cash for hand-knit sweaters. Those are facts. But the truth is, smaller and heavier, I wanted my kids to see me walk into the teeth of our past. Look up and keep going. If your past lived in a city like this, would you return and knock on its door again? If your answer is no, I understand. If your answer is yes, tell me, what would you want the city to say back? 6 winters ago, I left this place with a suitcase that did not close, and a reputation that closed every door before I touched the knob. A rumor, filed like a legal brief by my stepsister Daphne, suggested I had been outselling myself. The lie had all the right adjectives and just enough detail to feel like memory. It curled under my plate at dinner, lay on my pillow like a warning, rattled like coins in my pockets. My family asked for proof of innocence, like you can peel it off a person and present it on a plate. I learned then that in certain rooms, the truth requires a witness who wanted you to have it in the first place. I left. I went north on a night when the river iced at the edges, when the sky hung so low it felt like a ceiling you could reach. I rented a room where the radiator clanged like an old man clearing his throat. I worked days at a diner and nights at a yarn shop, learning the patience of stitches and the arithmetic of rent. I did not know, how could I have known, that I was not alone? I did not know 3 heartbeats had already come along, quietly rewriting my future with each flicker. Noah and Theo arrived first, 10 minutes apart, impatient brothers who negotiated with gravity from the moment they breathed. June followed, late by a soft minute, holding the room like a light does, gently and without apology. I learned that the world, despite its meanness, still sends you nurses with warm hands, neighbors who leave casseroles on steps, and strangers who hold doors without asking what you owe them. I learned to knit like it was cartography, mapping warmth onto places that had forgotten it. They look like him. This is always when people lean closer, so go ahead, lean. The boys have his winter blue eyes that turn pale steel in the shade and summer glass in the sun. They raise one eyebrow when they are skeptical, a move I used to tease and now watch with a tug I refuse to name. June has my mouth, stubborn and soft at once, and the exact dimple I swore was recessive. I never told them his name. Names are anchors. I wanted us light enough to maneuver. Back in New York, we moved into the top half of a tilting 2 family, where the landlord fried onions at sunrise and the downstairs neighbor kept orchids on the fire escape like they were secret pets. The 4 of us slept in the same room for a while, a fortress of mattresses where I could add up every breath. At night, I knit. Fishermen's sweaters in storm gray. Cardigans in marigold with leather buttons I found at a closing sale in Red Hook. Baby hats in sky blue for the newborns I did not know but rooted for anyway. On Saturdays, we hauled everything to a market in Fort Greene, where vendors called the kids the little board and asked June for pricing advice. If you have ever watched a 6-year-old frown at a number and adjust it upward, you know the precise sound hope makes. The winter week, everything changed, began, as most bad weeks do, with a bill that arrived early and a radiator that decided heat is for weaklings. June's forehead warmed under my palm, her breath threadbare at the edges. I bundled her twice, then a third time, wrapped my parka around us both, wedged Noah and Theo under blankets in the double stroller, and pushed into the night toward the pharmacy that kept its lights on for people like us. Snow fell like it had auditioned for a better movie and landed in ours anyway. A car door swung open in front of the pharmacy, and a man stepped out, wearing the kind of wool that reads board minutes and expects them to behave. I do not look at men like that at night. The city teaches a woman to ration eye contact the way she rations groceries. But June coughed a small, decisive cough, and the man's attention clicked toward us like a lens snapping into focus. He ended his call with 2 words. I would later hear redirect entire rooms, I will decide. He took his coat off and offered it without preface. If you are thinking this reads like a scene, I know, it felt like one. He draped the coat over June himself, the way you cover a sleeping child in a car at a late hour, careful not to wake what you are trying to protect. What is her name? He asked, voice warmer than the night. June, I said. These are Noah and Theo. June, he repeated. The name shifted in his mouth from month to person. Good month. The city forgives itself in June. He held the door, and we passed into bright pharmacy light, which always feels like interrogation until it turns into mercy. He found the children's acetaminophen without asking where it hid. He did not offer to pay, which I appreciated, and he did not make a show of not offering, which I appreciated more. When I returned to the sidewalk, he handed me a card, heavy stock that meant it had been designed to be kept Lucas North. If you live here, you know the last name. North Capital, glass towers that throw noon back at the sun, a foundation that puts its name on buildings and food on tables, depending on who you ask. The first name was a memory that lived somewhere I did not visit, a winter night hotel I had not planned to stay in, a stranger with careful hands. A storm closing bridges and opening a room where we agreed to be only the parts of ourselves we could bear. He called himself Winter that night. Maybe that is why the city feels honest in February. It remembers us. On the walk home, June's fever softened and my breath loosened in increments. I counted like stitches. The coat hung over our chair by the door. A black mountain in a small room. I promised myself I would return it in the morning with thanks and a knit hat he did not need. Pride wants what it wants. Survival will bargain behind its back. By dawn, the radiator coughed to life, and the rent suddenly had a louder voice. The market had been slow, payments were pending, and the cheerful threat on my landlord's voicemail used the word late. The way a dentist uses the word cavity. I counted cash in my grandmother's dented cookie tin, the one that still remembers the sound of a 1999 fall down the stairs. I was short. If you have lived this dance, you know the steps, 3 calls, extension, extension, miracle, and a hard swallow. The 4th call was the one I told myself was just coat return courtesy. Lucas's driver answered. He recognized my voice in the way that suggests good training and better memory. He offered to come to Ridgewood to make it simple. I agreed and kept the kitchen clean while I waited, the way my mother taught me to greet help, as if company were coming. The car was the color of reflections. The driver, Ortiz, had the kind eyes of someone who knows how many versions of a city live between sunrise and midnight. He knelt to greet the kids like they were visiting dignitaries. "Morning. Bored," he said. "What is on the agenda?" Theo replied. "Serious. Budget." "We are short on gummy bears," Ortiz nodded. "Grave, noted." Midtown smelled like money, pretending to be air. Lucas waited in a lobby that made my sneakers feel loud. He saw us, and the official brightness on his face slid into something unlisted human. Unguarded, a fraction less tall. "How's June?" he asked. When she answered, he crouched until their eyes were level and listened the way adults forget to. I gave him his coat and my thanks. He asked if he could do more. He offered coffee and a warm bagel. I said I had school drop-off and deadlines, code for, "I can't afford to accept too much from men like you." His gaze tracked the twins. Matching cuffs, the neatness that poverty learns to call minimalism. The yarn looped like a bracelet around my wrist because I ran out of hands. "You knit," he said. Not a question. "I sell," I said. "What if I invest?" he asked. I laughed, and it sounded like a window slamming. "In sweaters." "In you," he said. If your pride has ever stood between you and the heat bill, you know the calculus that followed. I asked him to buy 10 sweaters at full price. He said 12. He asked me to invoice his foundation. He asked whether I would consider consulting on a winter initiative, maker spaces, microgrants. A storefront that looked in his slide deck the way safety looks in dreams. "I do not take charity," I said. "Then do not," he said. "Take work?" I told him I needed to think. He let me. He gave me a card with a second number, his direct line, and told me to use it for sweaters or radiators, whichever failed first. We left on a sentence that did not end, just curved around a corner into the day. At pickup, Ridgewood felt like a town attached to a city by a stubborn promise. The boys wore paper medals a teacher had stapled into circles. June wore a paper crown that said boss. There was a debate, she said. I won. I did not ask over what. It did not matter. She spoke like a person who expects the room to hold. On the playground, I checked my phone and saw the wire confirmation. The foundation had paid in advance for 12 sweaters, plus a sum that read like a dare. Aaron from North Capital's philanthropy office requested a W-9 in a message that made bureaucracy sound like a compliment. Another text came a moment later from an unsaved number. Daphne. Welcome back, little sister. People say Ridgewood is charming in the winter. Are you finding it charming? I put the phone away and watched Noah convince Theo that velocity was their friend. I let the cold make my eyelashes crisp. When I looked again, there was a second text. Grandfather is awake. He is asking about legacy. He thinks in ring boxes and front page photos. He asked for an Anson bride in a sentence that did not include your name. It included mine. And Lucas's, If you have ever gotten a message that makes you want to sit down on the nearest curb and renegotiate with your life, you understand the itch in my palms. I typed, "Leave me alone," she replied. "Family never leaves." Sometimes I think the city is a mirror that only returns the parts you already suspect. That night, while the twins staged a rescue mission at the edge of the bunk bed, and June reorganized the crayons into a gradient like a soft-bellied CFO, my phone rang with a number I knew by the shape of it. Our grandfather's voice arrived like an old cathedral reopening after repairs. "Eden," he said, "I hear you are back." I hear you have... children? 3, I said, pronouncing each number like a shield. "Children are the only honest ledgers," he said. "We are discussing ledgers tomorrow night, 8 of the clock. North Capitol will be represented, you will attend." A small pause that felt like a choice I did not get to make. "I am glad you are home." The line clicked off. I sat in the kitchen where the paint peeled at the window and the kettle wore a permanent blush of rust, and wrote a list titled Stability in my notebook. Rent cover. Food prioritize. Sweaters 12. Source buttons. Job consider. Ask terms in writing. Pride translate into boundaries. Safety non-negotiable. Secrets only if protection requires them. I did not sleep. I lay on my side and listened to the train 3 blocks away telling its long story. I listened to the building sigh. I watched the red city dots walk across the ceiling and thought about how life can be a row of lights that look random until you connect them and find they spell a name. I imagined walking into a midtown room that thinks it knows me, with 3 children who do know me. I asked myself something I ask you now. If you could stand at the edge of a room that once erased you and knock until someone opened, would you? Morning made the decision look easier than it felt. We dressed in our market, best clean sweaters, the twins in matching storm gray. I had priced too low on purpose. June in marigold, her hair in 2 small buns like punctuation marks. The subway car was packed with Wednesday, the air a braid of coffee and perfume and sleep. An older woman looked at our troupe and offered the smile people, save for parades and courage. "Strong engines," she said. "Keep them running." June nodded solemnly. North Capitol's lobby parceled the sky into glass squares. A woman named Erin met us with stickers and the steady cheer of a person who runs a small country with a calendar. "Children's Corner is this way," she said. "Snacks are labeled. Allergen, free options in blue. There is a quiet room if anyone needs a cry. We use it more than you would think." She winked at me and led the way. Lucas waited in a conference room that overlooked a version of the city so beautiful it felt unfaithful. He had shed his jacket, his sleeves rolled as if the day had personally asked for sleeves. "Before we talk numbers," he said, "I want to show you something." The glass polarized at the touch of a button, and the room softened into focus. On the screen, photos appeared. Makers, tables, sewing machines, and a light-washed room. A storefront mock-up with a chalkboard listing workshops mending, pattern reading, pricing for dignity. "The Foundation's winter pilot," he said. "We fund the space. We fund the time. We let the work teach the work." I stood there with my hands folded, because if I did not, they would shake. "Where do you see me?" "In the middle," he said. "Head of product. Instructor. Curator. These are words. The job is making sure the warmth is real." What if I do not fit in your press release? I asked. Then we do not write the press release, he said. We start with sweaters. He spoke like a person who understood that sometimes the smallest door is the only one you can walk through first. He did not try to garnish the offer with pity. He did not rehearse the part where people like him save people like me. He waited while I calculated and called Aaron back to the room when I asked about hours that hug school drop-off and terms that protect mothers. 3-month trial, Aaron said. Paid weekly. Benefits kick in immediately. If you need to leave, you can. If you want to grow, we grow. If anyone gives you a hard time, give them to me. Careful, Lucas said. She is the reason men like me learn manners. I looked at the table. I looked at the city. I looked at my children through the glass wall, bending magnet tiles into an improbable skyline. Okay, I said. 3 months. Some decisions sound like applause, even if a room is quiet. Aaron smiled. Lucas exhaled softly, like a person who'd been holding a string attached to a balloon and finally let it go on purpose. We were finishing the first stack of forms when the door opened without a knock, and Winter walked in wearing perfume and victory. Daphne. Her posture measured the room like a ruler you borrow and keep. Lucas, she said, you missed my call. Her eyes slid over the children's corner and back to me with an expression that understood inventory and preferred it expensive. Daphne, Lucas said. Neutral sand laid over a wire. Grandfather is awake, she said. His appetite for legacy remains robust, as expected. He wants an Anson bride in the news before the quarter turns. We all know how to read a calendar. She let that hang between us like a chandelier. Lucas's gaze flicked to me the way a person glances at a shore they can't admit to. He said nothing. Aaron said, mildly, we are in a meeting. Ms. Anson. Daphne smiled the way a person smiles when they are happy to let you keep your illusion of polite boundaries. Of course, she said. I will see you both tonight. She left a polished scent and the suggestion of headlines in her wake. June looked up from the carpet of tiles and announced, I do not like her smell. It is like when someone says sorry, but they are not. Noah nodded. Theo adjusted a tile. Lucas tried not to laugh and failed, which is how I knew he was not a machine, only a man who wears machinery well. On the sidewalk afterward, Ortiz opened the car door and the city breathed on us. Lucas stood beside the door like someone who understood cars are thresholds. 3 months, he said, and 12 sweaters. I considered the tenderness of accepting help and the ugliness of refusing it on principle when your children need boots. I will invoice, I said, and I will need the storefront to stock fibers that do not lie about what they are. Done, he said. I like the truth, even when it is expensive. June leaned out of the car. And we need gummy bears, she added, businesslike. For morale. Lucas looked at me for permission. I shook my head. He nodded like a person who recognizes the higher law of a household and stepped back. The ride home passed in the blur of weekday light. A bank alert chimed. Money had landed where fear used to live. My phone buzzed again. Daphne. You move fast. Grandfather appreciates decisiveness. He is expecting you at 8. Wear something the cameras like. I tucked the phone deep in my pocket and let the city wash past. At home, I stood at the sink, and felt the water run hot over my hands until it stung. The kettle clicked. The radiator hissed like a cat guarding a bowl. I made grilled cheese the way my mother taught me, low heat, a lid for steam. Patience as ingredient. The kids ate with the gravity of field workers and left diagonals of crumbs like maps. When the apartment settled into its after-dinner hum, I took a small tin from the back of the cupboard, a tea tin with a lid that sticks in July, and opened it. Inside, wrapped in tissue, sat a ring that does not belong to me, and does. Anyway, a diamond that looks like winter sun on water, the one I had planned to give my cousin before I ran out of family. And excuses. I had saved it from a day I do not let myself replay fully. A snowbound hotel, a stranger's careful hands, a blue hour that felt longer than time. If you ask whether I kept it because I wanted evidence that something beautiful had happened, the honest answer is yes. I closed the tin. I sat at the table with the kids, backpacks slumped like small animals at my feet, and wrote the word tonight at the top of a page. Then I listed what I would not do. I would not apologize for breathing. I would not hand my children to a story that eats mothers. I would not sign anything. I had not read twice and had Aaron read once more. I would not let a man who knows my pulse better than the city traffic direct the shape of my name. I changed into a dress that looks black in photographs and blue in real life. I braided my hair because it behaves better when it is given a job. I looked at my face and recognized the person I needed to be. Courage rarely shows up as a feeling. It shows up as a posture. If you were me, what would you have worn? What would you have rehearsed on the way out the door? The babysitter arrived. Evelyn, a nursing student who can calm a fever with a song in Spanish and a wet cloth. I gave her the list, the emergency numbers, the too many instructions that read like a mother translating fear into ink. She touched my arm. We will be fine. I believed her because she believes herself. Outside, Ridgewood smelled like the first half of a snowstorm. The train flooded into the station with its old complaint. On the platform, I caught my reflection in a darkened window and did not look away. The city flicked past the mural off Wyckoff, the neon that has outlasted 3 landlords, the narrow slice of skyline that belongs to everyone and no one. My phone hummed once more. A message from an unlisted number I had not given to anyone today, and that somehow found me anyway. We are ready for you, Ms. Anson. 8 sharp. I put the phone away. I wrapped my coat tighter and watched the tunnel draw its line of light toward us. Somewhere above this city, a boardroom had set places as if legacy were dinner. Somewhere on a kitchen table, my children's art projects dried in curlicues of glue. Somewhere, a ring in a tea tin waited to be what it was before anyone named it. When the train doors opened, I stepped in. The train swayed through the tunnel like a long, low thought. I stood near the door, my reflection bending with each turn, and tried to slow my breathing. I would forgotten how the underground hum vibrates against your ribs. Every New Yorker has a rhythm. The subway drums back to them. Mine sounded like a countdown. At each stop, I whispered the same question under my breath. What am I walking into? And no one noticed, because everyone here talks to ghosts. The station under Fifth Avenue was warmer than it should have been. That old Manhattan heat that climbs from the pipes and smells faintly of ambition. My heels clicked a steady pulse through the marble of the Anson Tower's lobby. The guard looked up, startled for a fraction of a second, and then the kind of recognition dawned that you can't unlearn. "Miss Anson," he said. The name sat heavy, like a coat I would meant to leave behind. Upstairs, the city disappeared behind the reflection of its own windows. The dining room stretched in gold and glass. Chandeliers, like constellations, hung above a table, big enough to seat an apology between every pair of people. At the far end, my grandfather sat upright, alive and pale, with tubes discreetly hidden by silk and a glass of water that nobody had dared to touch. His eyes, clouded but still commanding, found me before I crossed the carpet. "Eden." His voice carried through the air like an old hymn. "You look like your mother, when she was honest." It was the closest thing to affection he would ever said. "I did not know honesty was hereditary," I answered. Too soft for anyone else to catch. Daphne stood behind his chair, her hand resting lightly on the wood as if she were already inheriting it. Her smile curved like a signature she would practiced. "Grandfather wanted you here," she said. "It is a family evening." Family. The word still cracked somewhere behind my ribs. I sat across the table from Lucas North, who was studying a file open in front of him, but not reading it. The look he gave me was not surprise. It was recognition, trying to remember its script. "Mr. North," my grandfather said, turning the room like a conductor, "you have been a friend to this family. I am told your foundation's project is proceeding well." Lucas nodded. "We are on schedule. Eden's been helping us refine the model." My grandfather's eyebrows rose, a gesture that had once made whole boards of directors flinch. "Eden," he repeated, tasting the word like an unfamiliar ingredient. "Helping you. She is talented," Lucas said simply. "Efficient. Clear about what she believes in." Daphne poured herself wine with the elegance of someone delaying the next explosion. "And what exactly does she believe in, Lucas?" she asked. "Sweet and sharp." "Redemption or rebranding?" I did not flinch. "Work," I said. "I believe in work." A waiter entered with trays of roast and steam. The scent of rosemary could not hide the tension. My grandfather waited until the plate settled before he spoke again. "This family has an image problem," he said. "For 6 years, our name has been linked to scandal and pity. That ends now. Daphne is stepping into her role. She and Mr. North will unite 2 legacies. Restore our standing and continue the line." I stared at the fork on my plate, silver warped by chandelier light. "You mean marriage? Call it what you like," he said. "The papers will call it sense." Lucas's chair scraped back slightly, a sound too polite to be defiant and too real to be compliant. "I agreed to a conversation," he said, low. "Not a merger." "Conversations are for equals," my grandfather replied. "Partnerships require vision." He turned to me. "And you, Eden, you will stay in the program. It is good press. Everyone loves a second chance story. You will make our philanthropy look merciful." The word hit harder than I expected. Mercy from him was a transaction. "You can't use people like props," I said, before I could stop myself. He smiled faintly. "You think the world allows otherwise? Every family is theater. I am simply casting it properly." The clink of glass followed, and Daphne leaned forward, her voice silk over steel. "You should thank him. He is giving you relevance." Lucas looked between us, the confusion sharpening into understanding. "You planned this," he said to her, bringing her here, lining up the story before I even knew it had a script. Daphne's lips parted in an almost laugh. "I do not write fiction, Lucas. I just do not waste opportunity." "Then let me waste it for you," he said, rising. "This meeting's over." My grandfather's voice cut through the air again. "Sit down." He did not. Neither did I. The silence afterward was the kind that makes chandeliers sway. Outside, the air felt cleaner, even if it was not. Lucas caught up with me near the elevators. "You should not have been dragged into that," he said. "I walked in on my own," I replied. I knew what the invitation meant. He shook his head. "You could not have." "Of course I could," I said. "I was born into it." The elevator arrived. He pressed the button for the lobby, but neither of us stepped inside. "Eden," he said finally, "if you want out of the program, say it. I will cover whatever you lose." I almost laughed. "You think this is about money? It is always about money in this city." "No," I said. "Sometimes it is about who gets to stand in the room and still recognize themselves afterward." The doors closed between us before he could answer. I walked out into the street, the city glaring white from snowlight and shop fronts. Somewhere above me, glass towers traded the language of power through light signals. Only they understood. I caught my reflection in a window and saw a woman wearing calm-like armor. Back in Ridgewood, the babysitter had fallen asleep on the couch. The apartment was warm. The kids were dreaming in soft exhales. I tucked the blanket around Evelyn, turned off the lamp, and sat by the window with a mug of water gone cold. The city outside pulsed with neon and late sirens. I thought about Lucas's face in the moment he realized the lie had found. Fool him again. I thought about Daphne's perfume, the kind that cost $400 to smell effortless, and I thought about my grandfather's voice calling legacy a ledger. If your family asked you to trade your dignity for a nameplate, would you sign? If the man who might still be the father of your children stood between duty and choice, would you step closer or away? The next morning, New York pretended nothing had happened. That is the gift and curse of this city. It forgets you until it needs your story again. At the storefront office, Erin met me with coffee and a look that already knew. "He told me what happened," she said. "How bad? Stage 4 manipulation," I said. "Prognosis? Uncertain," she smiled grimly. "Welcome to philanthropy. We reviewed shipments, schedules, patterns, all the little things that anchor chaos. Work has always been my antidote to memory." By noon, we had fabric samples spread across the table like a treaty. When Lucas appeared in the doorway, Erin gave him a look that said, "Pick your words carefully." "We need 10 minutes, he said. I followed him into the hallway, lined with framed photographs of donations and ribbon cuttings. "I should have warned you," he began. "No," I said. "You should not have had to." He exhaled, eyes flicking toward the glass, beyond which my children played with colored yarn balls. "Your grandfather wants a story he can control. He thinks marrying an Anson makes me easier to market." "Does it?" "No," he said. "It makes me visible in ways I do not like." He hesitated then, quieter. "I did not know Daphne would drag you into it." "I did not even know you were." He stopped himself. "You do not owe me answers." I looked at him, at the clean line of his jaw, the fatigue that lives behind expensive restraint. "Maybe I do," I said. "6 years ago, in a snowstorm. You remember," he froze. For a heartbeat, the hum of the building vanished. "Yes," he said finally. "Hotel Marlowe, room 1423. So he did remember. The air changed shape around us." "You told me your name was Winter," I said. He almost smiled. "And you said yours was Grace." "I did not want to be found." "Neither did I." He looked at the floor, then back at me. "Those children," I did not let him finish, "are mine," I said. "That is all you need to know right now." "Right now," he repeated. "Do not make this harder than it already is." "I am not trying to," he said quietly. "I just do not know what is real anymore. Welcome to my side of the glass." We stood there too long. Then Aaron called from the office, breaking the spell. Work waited. Life demanded continuity. I walked past him without turning. Behind me, I heard him say my name once, softly enough that only the walls might believe it. By evening, snow had begun again, fine and deliberate. I picked up the kids from school, their backpacks bouncing, their chatter like static filling silence. We stopped at the bodega for milk and a single cupcake, because celebration does not always need a reason. At home, the twins wrestled over a blanket while June sat at the table drawing with a concentration that could rebuild cities. "Mom," she said suddenly, "do people get to choose who they marry?" I looked at her, the way she did not look up from her drawing, as if the answer could rearrange the world she was sketching. "Sometimes they do," I said. "Sometimes other people try to choose for them. But the good stories are when someone says no." She nodded. "Then I am going to write a good story." That night, I found a note slipped under our door. No envelope, no signature, just 4 words written in a hand I recognized from too many family documents. "Keep the children safe." I stared at it until the edges blurred. Then I folded it into my pocket and went to check that the windows were locked, though I did not know which threat I was guarding against the past or what comes after it. When the phone rang again near midnight, I answered before the second ring. Lucas's voice was low, urgent. "Do not panic," he said, which is what people say right before you do. "There is been a leak. Someone fed the press. A story about us, about you and me and the foundation. They are naming you as my fiancé." I sat down hard. "What? It is already trending?" "I am handling it, but who would Daphne?" he said. "It is her play. She is trying to corner both of us." My hands shook. "Then you deny it." "I will, but that won't stop them from printing your name." I looked toward the children's room, where moonlight struck the floor. "What happens to the program?" "I will protect it," he said. "And you?" "You can't protect what you do not own," I said, voice steady now. "I will take care of myself." "Eden, good night." "Lucas." I hung up before I could hear whatever softness might undo me. Outside, the sirens braided with the wind. I opened the window just enough to smell the city's heartbeat metal. Rain, old dreams, and whispered to no one in particular, "They think they know the story. Let them read the wrong one first." Then I turned off the light, and the dark felt like a promise waiting to be rewritten. By morning, my name was everywhere, poured into headlines that spoke in italics and guesses. Mystery fiancé. Hidden mother. North Capital's secret heart. They did not use the words I would have chosen. Working, learning, fighting to keep the apartment warm. The photos were unkind. In the precise way, only candid light can be me exiting the revolving door with June's mitten hooked to my belt loop, the twins racing one another through the reflected city, my face turned not toward cameras, but toward the nearest exit. I made coffee so strong it burned like honesty, skimmed 3 articles until the fonts blurred, and shut the screen before the comments could begin their ritual. Judge, forget, repeat. Aaron called, voice brisk and protective. We are pausing all external comms, she said. No posts, no quotes, nothing. We can't pull back. Legal's drafting a statement about privacy and misinformation. How are the kids? Building a cereal fort, I said. Preparing for siege. Good, she replied. Keep them behind the walls. Lucas is at the board. Half of them are concerned about rumors. Half about volatility. None about humans. Checks out, I said. What does he want me to do? Stay in, she said. Do not open the door to anyone with a lanyard. I looked at our door. Its scuffed paint, the chain that had learned to sound sturdy. We do not have a doorman, I said. We have nap time. After lunch, a knock came 3 taps, polite like a practiced kindness. I opened to a woman with camera lashes and a laminated badge. Miss Anson, Samantha Reed, the Herald. You would love the angle, I said. Not the truth. She kept her smile, slid one designer heel toward the threshold. We want to give you a chance to respond. To what fiction? Her shoe crossed the line by exactly an inch, and the inch was a life. I looked at her foot, then down the hallway, where a poster of the solar system floated above the neighbor's mail slot. Move your foot, I said, and when she did not, I added, my daughter is napping. If you wake her, I will teach you the difference between a mom and a headline. She withdrew, and I closed the door with the quiet finality Ridgewood apartments require. Only then did my hand start to shake. Evening pushed a purple bruise across the sky. The city was loud with deliveries and small salvations, the kind of weekday night that turns obligations into background noise. My grandfather called the way he used to summon staff, voice corridored with marble. You have embarrassed the family, he said. Daphne is distraught. Daphne does not do distraught, I said. She does strategic moisture. At the gala tomorrow, you will attend and smile, he continued. We will stage a united front. We will let them take their photographs, and then we will give them their story. Grace can still be restored. Grace does not arrive by PR, I said. It arrives by repentance. You sound like your mother, he said, the insult honed. Be there, Eden. Do not make the Ansons look small because you have forgotten your place. He hung up before I could remind him that the only place I ever had in that house was the doorway. Lucas called twice. I let the line buzz until it went quiet. On the 3rd try, I answered because the silence had turned into a mirror, and I did not like what I saw there. Do not go to the gala, he said without preamble. It is a trap. I know, I said. I grew up under the table where the traps get drawn. If I do not show, he will bury me. If I do, he will stage me. There is not a version where the tablecloth is not lifted. I will be there, he said. That will make it worse. Or it will give us leverage, he said. If the room expects a fairy tale, we can choose the plot twist. We are not co-authors. I said. We never were. He did not argue. The soft exhale on the line said enough. Then let me stand where the cameras will insist I do, and tell a different story. Which one? The true one, he said, and for a second I hated him for how cleanly the word fit in his mouth. I found the dress I keep for courtrooms and goodbyes, a black silk that photographs as certainty. I pinned my hair into a strategy that would not fall without permission. I slipped the small tea tin from the cupboard and opened it. The ring lay where it always had, winter sun trapped in stone, a private proof that a beautiful thing had once chosen me. I tucked it into a pocket. I would stitched into the lining with the same small faith I use for rent, math, and ferry schedules. At the plaza, the chandeliers hung like golden laws. The flashes began in the foyer and multiplied at the threshold, white weather that made faces into weather vanes. Erin met me just inside, her expression composed for television. Legal says we can refuse to answer, she murmured, but refusing becomes its own answer. If you speak, keep it to values and verifiable facts. No timelines. No accusations. So tell the truth, but make it symmetrical, I said. Exactly. Lucas appeared not like a storm, but like the pause between thunder and what follows, suit fitting his posture the way habits fit the rich. When he saw me, he did not smile. He nodded once, a soldier and a man, and offered the distance of an ally rather than the closeness of a claim. We entered together, but not as a pair. An art I did not know, I remembered until I needed it. Daphne stood with our grandfather beneath a floral arch, the size of a budget. Champagne silk skimming her collarbones like a contract. She kissed the air an inch from my cheek. You look almost comfortable, she said. That must be new. Discomfort keeps me honest, I said. I recommend it. Honesty is for confessionals, she replied. This is a fundraiser. She glided back toward the cluster of cameras waiting beside. The step and repeat. Shall we? She trilled to the room. Reporters parted for her like a minor sea, then turned as one toward Lucas and me. Mr. North, Miss Anson, the photographer from the Herald, called. Over here, together, please. I felt more than saw Lucas's glance asking, not directing. I lifted my chin a fraction. We turned. The photographer raised his camera. And in that sliver of suspended time, I saw the cufflink flash, a diamond cut to match the ring in my pocket. The pair we had divided, without knowing it, 6 years ago in a room that smelled like citrus and secrecy. He followed my gaze, then met my eyes, the recognition landing, with the strange, vertiginous relief that accompanies falls you survive. The camera clicked. A moment later, a second flash tore through the space, as if the room wanted to keep us. I stepped off the carpet before it turned into a floor plan. I could not exit. On the terrace, cold cut the noise into manageable pieces. The city glittered like a patient liar. Lucas found me fast, as if his legs remembered how to walk toward me before his mind decided. It is the same set, he said, voice low, not a question. The ring and the cufflinks. Yes, I said. I kept mine because I needed one beautiful thing. The ocean of that winter could not pull away. I kept mine because gifts that make you feel seen are rare, he said. He put his hands in his pockets as if to restrain them. Eden, I looked for you after the storm. I checked records. I checked guest logs. Grace left no footprints. I wiped them, I said. I did not want to be found by the wrong person. "Am I the wrong one?" he asked. "I do not know yet," I said, "but I know what I am. I am their mother. That is the first and last job." "I hear you," he said, and he sounded like a man telling the truth, even if he only just learned it. "I am asking for the chance to learn them. Not on camera. Not for the board. For me. You are not the only person asking for chances tonight," I said, looking back through the glass at Daphne, luminous in the way polished things are. "And she plays for keeps. Then we stop playing," he said. Before I could reply, the doors opened, and a small procession of cameras stepped onto the terrace, like they would been invited by the sky. Daphne led them, smile calibrated for benevolent victory. "A family moment," she said, gesturing as if she were the hostess at a softer war. "Just a few words for the donors and the press." Aaron materialized at my elbow. "We can leave," she whispered. "We do not owe them anything." And then the orchestra inside modulated into the speech key, and my grandfather's voice rose with microphone clarity. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "thank you for your generosity. Tonight, we do not just raise funds, we raise futures. And we celebrate the union of legacy and leadership that will secure our city's next century." A spotlight found Lucas and me, the light landing without consent. A stagehand tugged at the doors to guide us in, a choreography already in motion. I felt the old instinct to shrink, to refuse breath so I could slip past structures meant to capture me. Then I looked at the cameras, their red recording dots like small unblinking judgments, and I remembered June asking whether people get to choose who they marry. I took a breath and stepped forward into the light. The room hushed in that delicious way rooms do when they smell blood or absolution. I reached the podium before my grandfather could introduce me as anything except my name. "I will speak," I said, and his fingers tightened on the edge of the lectern with the smallest, proudest fury. The microphone hummed against my palm. 1,000 eyes waited to tell me who I was. I still had my own. "My name is Eden Anson," I began, and the sound of my voice through the speakers startled me with its steadiness. "I am a mother, a maker, and for the last months I have been consulting for a foundation that, at its best, tries to make the month a little shorter for families like mine." The screens flanking the stage filled with my face, and I did not flinch. "Some of you read my name this morning and decided I was a scandal or a surprise. I am neither. I am a person whose life does not belong to the page that needs a story today." A murmur moved across the tables. Discomfort, relief, the small applause of conscience. I put both hands on the lectern to keep the next part from shaking. "I will say this once, clearly, because rumors multiply when you feed them. I am not engaged to Mr. North. I am not a prop for any family's idea of legacy. I am not available for purchase, merger, or rebrand." A tiny, involuntary laugh broke from someone in the back. "It was not unkind," I continued, "because if I stopped, I was not sure I would start again. Here's what I am. I am a woman who left this city when it chose to believe a lie about me. And I am a woman who came back to show 3 children that fear is not a home. I am working not as a fairy tale, but as a vendor who invoices, and an instructor who reads sign-up sheets, and a person who knows the price of milk in 4 neighborhoods." I looked for Erin and found her at stage left. Chin high, eyes bright, with the fierce kindness of people who pick up shards without being asked. I believe in work that pays, stories that tell the truth, and headlines that do not use children as collateral. Cameras leaned forward like tall flowers. My grandfather shifted, the movement of a glacier, deciding it had heard enough. "Tonight," I said, "I will make the one request I get to make while this room is looking. My children are not public property. You do not have their names. You do not have their faces. You do not have my permission to turn their existence into an angle. If you want a photo, photograph the programs that will fund winter coats. If you want a quote, the women who keep families warm with their hands and their hours." The quiet was not silence anymore. It was listening. I felt it land in the place speeches rarely reach, just behind the ribs where a person keeps their stubbornness. And then I did the thing I had not planned to do, because plans are for people whose pasts stay put. I reached into the hidden pocket and set the ring on the lectern, not to display, but to anchor. A light found it anyway. Someone mocked a ring once because they did not know what it cost to keep. I said, "Here's the truth. Its price tag was the least interesting thing about it. What mattered was who I was when I wore it. Seen? Safe. For a night. I do not need it to prove myself anymore. I am done proving myself to rooms that already decided." I closed my hand over the ring and slid it back, flew into the pocket with a movement that felt like reopening a door, then shutting it on my terms. "If you need a headline," I said, and now my voice did shake, but only because it was heavy with the thing I was about to lift. "Write that the Anson Foundation will fully fund the winter pilot for makers across the boroughs with no strings attached. That North Capitol will match those funds, and that the only photographs we ask for are the before and after shots of homes with heat. Gasps like small storms, heads swiveling to boards and donors." Aaron stepped forward, a general with a spreadsheet for a sword. "We have the budget," she said into a second mic, her calm infecting the back row first. "Our endowment can shoulder the pilot. North Capitol committed to a match in Q2 earmarks. Mr. Graham, Anson," and here she looked at my grandfather not like a supplicant, but like a CFO, "if you would like the front page tomorrow, let it be for that." My grandfather's jaw tightened, the hinge of an old gate deciding on creak or swing. He took the mic with a measured exhale. "We support the pilot," he said, and the room trained to applaud money obeyed. "For optics," he added under his breath, too close to his lapel for most to hear, but close enough for me. Lucas stepped to the other side of me, not touching, close enough to be counted. "North Capitol will match," he said, aloud and unqualified, voice carrying like a bridge. Reporters shot questions like confetti. "When did your relationship begin? Is there a wedding date? Are the rumors about the children true?" And I lifted a palm. "No children questions," I said. "I have given you what I am willing to give. The rest belongs at a kitchen table that does not have a sponsor." A reporter with kind eyes and a voice that had covered hospital openings asked, "What do you call this moment, Amos Anson?" I thought of the radiator's hiss, the grocery lists, the small tin with a ring inside it, the cufflinks flash, the tri-colored magnet tiles my children use to build headquarters for the future. I call it a beginning that does not apologize for what came before, I said. And I call it mine. The orchestra, because ballrooms love cues, rose without being asked. Photographers lowered their lenses in that old-fashioned gesture that means respect or surrender. Daphne stood near the back. Smile, tightened to wire. Our eyes met over the donors' heads, and for a second we were children again, balancing on the marble threshold of the house where praise was currency and silence an invoice. She lifted her chin a fraction, a queen in a losing position pretending she preferred it. I did not look away. Afterward, in the green room that smelled like hairspray and old paper, Aaron pressed a bottle of water into my hand and said, "You just changed our quarterly goals." I sank onto the sofa, like a dropped stitch finding its place. "He will retaliate," I said. "He will do it in ways that look like weather." "We will umbrella," she said, "and we will lawyer." Lucas stood in the doorway, not crossing the line as if the carpet were a tripwire. "You were good," he said, the word insufficient but honest. "You were brave." "I was necessary," I said. "Brave is for days with sleep." He looked at my pocket. Then at me. "I meant what I said about the kids. I won't push you. I will wait. But I want to meet them. Properly. Not as an audience. As their father." The word father did not echo. It settled. "One day," I said. "Not because the city is staring, because you have shown up when it is not." He nodded, like men do when they are signing contracts with themselves. "I can do showing up." "Then do it for more than a week," I said. "Do it when the board needs you somewhere else. Do it when the story is not flattering. Do it the day the heater breaks at midnight." A small smile, sad and real. "Consider this my calendar invite," he said. I almost smiled back. Then my phone vibrated a message from an unknown number, or from the past disguised as one. 4 words, "Keep the children safe." The same script, same hand. I stared until the letters rearranged themselves into the only answer I had. "I will?" I whispered, and pocketed the threat like a receipt. On the way out, the press tried one more time to pull me into their choreography. I held the door for myself and walked into a night that finally smelled like winter rather than appetite. The plaza's lights made a false noon on the snow. We passed through it like a small, unarmored army, Aaron beside me, a security guard shadowing from 3 steps away, Lucas at a distance that would read as respect. Cameras clicked, but the sound had lost its power to rename me. Back in Ridgewood, the apartment was warm in the way rooms get when they have kept a promise. Evelyn handed me a scribbled list of snacks consumed, questions asked, laughs recorded, a ledger of ordinary victories. The twins were asleep in the improbable tangle only siblings can survive. June sat propped against pillows, awake in the serious way of children who have been practicing leadership in their heads. "Did you tell them?" she asked. "I told them what belonged to them," I said, "and I kept the rest." She nodded, satisfied. "Good." She slid a folded paper across the blanket. On it, she would drawn a building with big windows and people holding yarn, a sign over the door that read Warmth Store in block letters. Beneath it, no pictures of kids. "That is policy," she said, and I laughed until I almost cried. Later, when the apartment settled and the train told its midnight story, I stood by the window and watched the snow turn the street into a softer argument. My phone hummed once. "A message from Aaron, you were brilliant. Sleep if you can. Board fallout tomorrow. I will shield you where I can." Another from an unknown number that did not feel dangerous. "Not this time, proud of you, Ortiz." I exhaled, long and slow, and let the city's noise become weather again. If you had asked me a year ago whether I would ever stand at a podium and refuse to be drafted into someone else's war, I would have laughed and said I did not own a podium. Tonight I learned podiums are just tables with microphones, and I have been speaking at kitchen tables my whole life. I put the ring tin back in the cupboard and shut the door on it gently. Not because it was over, but because it was finally mine to open on a day that was not chosen by anyone else. When I turned off the light, the room did not feel like a cliffhanger. It felt like a cliff with a railing I would bolt it in place. And for the first time since coming home, the dark answered back with something that sounded like yes. By morning, the city had translated my speech into a dozen different dialects of opinion. Some called it brave, some reckless. A few said it was a masterclass in hostage negotiation, where the hostage taught the kidnappers better etiquette. The foundation phones lit like a switchboard in an old movie. Erin sent me a screenshot of the donations page, trending without adjectives. Then she added a second image, the board calendar, red with emergency meetings. "Do not read the comments," she texted. "Do drink water. I will call at 9. I tried not to read, and of course I did, the way your tongue seeks a chipped tooth. On my kitchen table lay 3 permission slips, a box of crayons, and the ring tin whose weight felt different now that it had been named out loud in a room that invented names. The apartment smelled like toast and radiator and crayons, which is to say it smelled like a life. June swung her legs from a chair too big for them and studied me as if I were a budget. She intended to balance. "Are people mad?" she asked. "Some are," I said. "Some are glad. Most are loud. Do we need new coats? We need the same coats," I said. "But we need better locks." She nodded, as though she had guessed that answer and only wanted to hear me say it. The twins staged a debate over who got the dinosaur lunchbox, and it felt like normal until a small envelope slid under our door with the slow confidence of bad news. Inside was a letter on Anson, letterhead, words compressed like a fist, notice to vacate. 30 days. Cause, safety, reputation, risk. The apartment owner, it stated, had accepted an offer from a holding company associated with the family trust and intended to renovate. I laughed once, the kind of sound your throat makes when it can't decide whether to turn into a scream. The landlord's signature was not there. The letter used his name anyway. I sent a photo to Erin. She called immediately. "He can't do that." He did. "We will get a lawyer," she said. "Housing law is the only law in this city that remembers people live here." "Add it to the list," I said. Board meeting. Donor triage. Media triage. My rent trying to become a theory again. "You are not alone," she said. "Do not you dare try to be." On the school run, I kept my head down against the kind of cold that bites with small, precise teeth. Ortiz idled at the curb like a shadow that knew how to be helpful without being seen. "Morning," he said. "Bosses." The twins saluted. June nodded with gravity. He caught my eye. "A question without words. Are you safe for now?" I said. "For now counts," he replied. At the storefront office, Erin had turned a conference table into a command center. Legal pads in primary colors, a spreadsheet like a battlefield, coffee that tasted like triage and hope. "Here's the order of operations," she said. 1. We file a response to the eviction. 2, we get ahead of the board's panic by reminding them philanthropy plays better than scandal. 3, we build a firewall around the pilot so it does not get torched as a PR sacrifice. And 4, we figure out what Daphne does next and beat her to it. What does she do next? Either she goes soft frames herself as the misunderstood steward, or she goes hard legal, custody rumors, financial audits that pretend to be neutral. I felt my stomach flip the way it does on bridges. If you look down, custody rumors. That is the oldest trick, Erin said. Make the mother prove she is a mother in public. Over my dead board packet, I said. Correct, she said. Which is why I have already spoken to Simmons at Family Defense. You called a lawyer before coffee. I keep numbers. I hope I never use. She hesitated, then added, Also, Lucas asked for your schedule this week. He said he plans to show up when you are not watching. That is creepier than he means it. I said, I told him to translate it into groceries and pickup duty, she replied. He said, Done. The first blow landed by lunchtime, not as a headline, but as a subpoena. It came by messenger, the envelope heavy like guilt. Notice of deposition, Eden Anson, regarding statements made at the Anson Foundation Gala. The return address was a law firm, big enough to be its own weather system. Erin read it with the kind of calm only people who've been paid to be in rooms like that can manage. They want to reframe your speech as defamation, she said. They want to drag you into a process you can't afford and exhaust you into silence. Can they do that? They can try. We can file a motion to quash or narrow or delay. We can also respond with discovery of our own. Nobody likes sunlight unless they planned the picnic. Do we have leverage? We have facts, we have receipts, and we have donors who do not enjoy being used as props in a family power play, she said. Also, we have the matching pledge live on a website that the board approved with both hands in the air. She tapped her laptop. And we have this, an email from Daphne's assistant scheduling, embargoed, press about her, forthcoming engagement. Hallie, the timestamp predates your denial by 3 days. How did you people who work for people like Daphne prefer the feeling of clean hands? Erin said. Sometimes they leak because conscience. Sometimes because revenge. Sometimes because they just like me. I like you, I said. That is the safest motive. I only flirt with evidence. She said. After school, the twins performed a song they would learned about planets, while June followed me into the kitchen with Councilwoman Patience. Did the building do a bad thing? She asked. The building is a building, I said. People did a bad thing through it. Then we will be smarter than the bad thing, she said. We will live in our house even if they say we can't. We will live in our life, I said. The house is part of it, not the whole thing. If we have to move. She said, Can I paint my new room yellow? If we have to move, I said, we will paint an entire wall yellow and call it a sunrise. That night, Lucas texted, Can I take the boys to the park tomorrow after school? I will bring Ortiz. You can come or not. No cameras. I will keep my phone in the car. I want to learn their jokes. I stared at the message long enough for the screen to dim. Then I typed, You can pick them up with me. We go together. If they want to stay, we stay. If they want to come home, we come home. Understood, he replied. I will be on the bench that squeaks. The bench did squeak, an honest sound in a city that polishes its lies. The sky had that flat gray that makes you feel like you are inside a photograph. The boys gave him a look that measured and then softened. He did what good men do with children. When they are trying to be true, he followed. He climbed the low rock, held a small sleeve at the top of a slide, let himself be told how tag works by a 6-year-old who leads like a senator. I watched him learn their rhythms without editorial. When June came to sit beside me, we both pretended to be casual. "Is he a good person?" she asked. "He is trying to be," I said. "Try harder," she said, and so softly I almost missed it. "For us," Lucas returned with the boys flushed and triumphant. They had invented a game that involved tax policy and a dragon. "Mom, he runs slow," Theo announced, delighted. "He needs practice," Noah decreed. Lucas bowed to the legislature. "I require training. You require snacks," June corrected. "We all require snacks," I said. We walked to the bodega as a small procession, Ortiz humming something that sounded like a song from a summer he did not think he would remember. Lucas carried a paper bag like it contained treaties. He tried not to look at me when the twins reached for his hand because he understood that a mother's heart keeps time to what her children choose freely. At home, he noticed the draft at the window before I did, found the gap with 2 fingers, and fixed it with painter's tape like someone who remembers that warmth is an ingredient. He did not comment on the eviction letter clipped by a magnet to the fridge. His eyes paused, then moved on, the way you step around sleeping animals. When he left, he did not say goodbye with promises. He said, "Tomorrow I can take the early meeting so I can be at drop-off." "You have a board," I said. "I have a bench that squeaks," he answered. The next strike came from a different angle. A podcast hosted by a woman whose brand is empathy packaged with sharpened edges. Daphne was the guest. The clip hit my feed not because I follow her, but because the city likes to show you your name without warning. "We are all doing our best," Daphne said in a voice tuned to mellowness. "But sometimes people make choices that force families to set boundaries." The host made the soft, predatory sound of an interviewer who is about to open a vein. "Are you referring to Eden?" "I am referring to anyone who uses philanthropy as a platform for personal drama," Daphne said, deferential enough to seem kind, specific enough to be poisonous. "Legacy is not a toy." "What about the rumors regarding children?" the host asked coyly. "Rumors are cheap," Daphne said. "DNA is not." The clip ended there, deficient as a threat. I put my phone face down and stared at the ceiling where the paint had begun to remember it was once wet. Then I dialed Erin. "She wants a test," I said. "She wants a spectacle," Erin said. "There is a difference. If it protects them long-term to kill the rumor with a number, I will do it," I said, "but not on their schedule. Not as a circus." Erin was quiet, then said, "If you decide that, we control the terms. We pick the lab. We lock down the chain of custody. We set a protective order before anyone swabs anything. We make the announcement after we are ready. Not when they need a distraction. And Lucas, he will say yes," she said. "He is already acting like yes. He did, when I told him on the phone." A long breath left him, like air from a room that had been held too tight. "Whatever you need," he said. "Wherever, whenever, with whoever you trust." "If the results go public," I said, "the children become more interesting than they already are." Then we make them boring on purpose, he said. We issue one statement. No interviews. We never say their names. We never answer follow-ups. We send lawyers to remind people that the law is bored by gossip. And I will show up at 6:45 a.m. with waffles on days the headlines are mean. He said, I will proofread science projects. I will be at flu shots and fall festivals, and I will not post about it. If I falter, he said, Erin will staple the schedule to me. She would, I said. She has. Good, he said softly. The lab sat 4 floors above a dermatologist's office and 3 below a firm that designs apartments that look like the word untouchable. The nurse had warm hands, which is all I will say about a morning where something private became procedural. Chain of custody forms clicked into place like beads. Lucas signed the line under alleged father, a phrase that stung even as it served. We did not talk about the past or the hotel or the cufflinks. We talked about the weather and how February always takes longer than the calendar allows. Outside, reporters loitered like pigeons. Ortiz stepped between them and every photograph they hoped to capture, but a long lens still managed to catch the angle of my cheek as I bent to tie a shoelace. The caption would later read like a guess offered as fact. The next week blurred, drop-offs and boardrooms, lawyers and the market. 3 pairs of boots by the door arranged like solace. A string of small rebellions disguised as domestic tasks. Lucas showed up. He learned the route to school without mapping apps. He knew which crossing guard tells the best knock-knock jokes. He bought gummy bears in moderation and broccoli in bulk. He did not ask to stay when the kids were tired. He did not leave without washing the mugs. There were missteps. He booked a car with a back seat that smelled like new money, and the twins stuck to it like tape. He wore a suit to a parent meeting and learned in 20 minutes that nothing signals does not belong, like tailoring at a folding table. He corrected. He showed up in old boots and a navy sweater with an elbow patch that had earned the hole before it earned the patch, under certain streetlights. He looked like a person who had gotten off a boat late and decided to become useful. I asked myself the question you are asking now. Is that enough? When the lab called, the voice on the line carried the neutral tone of a person who delivers facts, as if they were not detonators. Results are available, she said. We can release to counsel. Erin conference called and the lab read numbers that rearranged the world without ceremony. I heard Lucas exhale, a sound too private to be on a conference call, and then silence. And then Erin's voice like a rope thrown across a gap. We will file the protective order and craft the statement. Nothing goes out until the paperwork is signed by a judge. How long? I asked. Hours, she said. I have seen a docket move for an heiress's dog. It can move for this. It did. The order came through at 4:13 p.m. I stood by the window watching the street perform its dusk ballet and read the language that drew a circle around my children's names. Lucas texted one word, here. He meant downstairs, ready to do pickup with me. He also meant the larger thing. We walked to school with a quiet that was not distance. It was respect. At the gate, a teacher with kind eyes looked at us the way people do when they have decided to root for a plotline. Early Valentines, she said, handing me a stack of construction paper hearts with uneven glitter. Love is loud this week. So is everything, I said. We are practicing volume control. The statement went live at 7 p.m., a paragraph that said everything and nothing. It named no children. It named no dates. It confirmed biology without offering biography. It requested privacy in the flat, unfriendly language lawyers teach you to use when you refuse to bleed on command. Predictably, the city tried to make new headlines out of a comma. Could a comma carry a custody war? Was North Capitol now a family brand? Did this make the Anson Alliance obsolete? Someone on television talked about optics until the words stopped sounding like English. Then a different blow, a notice from the Foundation's auditors requesting documents related to the pilot's budget and my contracting. Erin read it and swore in a way that sounded like a prayer. They are using process as punishment, she said. They want to find smoke where there is no fire so they can justify shutting the windows. Can they stop the program? They can try to suspend. But we have donors with receipts and a match pledge on record, she said. Also, we have a room full of women whose invoices made their rent. Get them ready to speak, I said. Not to tabloids. To the board. That is a new religion, she said. We will preach. The board meeting happened in a room designed to make people feel smaller than furniture. Lucas arrived with his tie askew, like an apology to the day. Erin set her laptop down with the finality of a judge. I wore the kind of calm you borrow from the future and pay back with interest. Daphne sat near the head of the table, flanked by two directors who liked their power aged in whiskey. Thank you for joining us, the chair said, performing courtesy like a reluctant waltz. We have concerns regarding program governance and reputational risk. Governance is my love language. Erin said, clicking open a deck that made numbers look like clarity. Here are the controls, here are the receipts, here are the outcomes. Reputational risk is mitigated by doing the thing we promised in the brochure, helping people. Daphne smiled, eyes cool. No one here wants to hurt the poor, she said. We just want to ensure that personal decisions do not destabilize our shared mission. Our mission, Lucas said, was destabilized by a leak you engineered. The room flinched like a horse, sensing thunder. Daphne's smile tightened. That is an accusation. It is an inference tied to a timestamp, Erin said, sliding a printout across the table. Your assistant scheduled embargoed press about an engagement before there was an engagement. The calendar invite is discoverable. The board can decide whether that is poor judgment or misconduct. Careful, Daphne said. You are out of your depth. I can swim, Erin said, unbothered. The chair cleared his throat, the universal signal for let us pretend we are reasonable. Our fiduciary responsibility requires that we eliminate distractions, he said. Therefore, we propose a temporary suspension of the pilot pending review. The word temporary in such rooms does not mean short. It means slow death. I stood up before my caution could tell me to sit. Here's what a suspension does outside this room, I said, voice steady. It means Mara in Brownsville can't pay her coned bill. It means Teresa in Bushwick takes her kid to the ER instead of her clinic because the bus fare ate her grocery budget. It means the winter gets longer while we teach ourselves we are prudent. Ms. Anson, the chair said, passion is admirable. Passion is cheap, I said. We're talking about math. Erin clicked to a slide full of bars that were not metaphors. Lucas leaned forward, forearms on the table, a posture that made the room remember he is not just a bang checkbook in a suit. We promised no strings, he said. If you cut the strings, donors will understand it as cowardice. And press loves a collapse. We can brief press, Daphne said. Press does not care about your brief, Aaron said. Press cares about a photograph of a shuttered storefront with a caption that says, "Program closed amid internal dispute." A director with a mustache you could date by decade said, "What do you suggest? We firewall the pilot budget," Aaron said. We create an independent oversight subcommittee with 2 board members and 1 external auditor. We publish outcomes monthly. And we put a moratorium on weaponizing personal lives as governance concerns. The room hated and admired her in equal measure, which is how you know you have their attention. The chair leaned back, a man calculating how many donors hated, being embarrassed, more than they loved, pretending politics is polite. Motion to vote, he said. Hands rose, some because momentum is seductive, some because math is. The motion carried. The pilot stood. Daphne did not move, except for her jaw, which flexed as if chewing steel. Fine, she said lightly. But if this program undermines the Foundation's reputation, we revisit. We can revisit gravity, too, Aaron said under her breath. Afterward, in the hallway that smelled like air-conditioned resolve, Lucas touched the doorframe and looked at me the way men do when they are resisting the urge to orphan a feeling with words. You were precise, he said. You were necessary, I said. So were you. I am late for a meeting, he said, the kind that would prefer me to be a person without other lives. I am choosing to be late. Go, I said, then come back. He nodded, and the nod looked like a man adding a new column to his life's spreadsheet labeled non-negotiable. The city rewarded our brief win by reminding us it owns the weather. That night, the heat went out across 3 blocks, our building included. I filed the 311 complaint, texted the landlord, who claimed to be working on it, then started the ritual of boiling water in kettles and laying towels against the windowsills. Lucas texted at 12, 7 a.m. on my way, with space heaters and a building super. I bribed with playoff tickets. You do not need to, I started to type, then deleted it. He arrived with Ortiz and a man named Sal who knew the radiator's private language. They bled air from a valve, cursed at a pipe like an uncle, coaxed a rattle into a purr. The twins slept through most of it. June did not. She stood in the doorway, solemn as a judge. It is cold, she said. Less cold now, Lucas replied. We are fixing it. You are trying, she corrected. Fixing comes after trying. Then I am in the right part, he said. She considered this, then passed him a small wool hat. You do not have hair that helps, she said. Wear this. He did. It looked ridiculous. He wore it anyway. The heater breathed back to life around 1:23 a.m. Sal declared victory, and Ortiz offered coffee from a thermos that tasted like saints. Lucas picked up a damp towel, wrung it out, and said nothing heroic. When they left, he said, "See you at 6:45. He meant it. The next morning, the building's mailbox held a new envelope, this one with the color of court. Daphne had filed for an emergency temporary order, restricting me from exploiting minors for publicity, attaching screenshots of headlines that showed none of my children's faces, and a handful of my sentences divorced from context. Aaron read the filing and made a sound like glass, remembering it used to be sand. She is counting on a judge who sees the words celebrity, foundation, children, and decides to be brave in the wrong direction, she said. We will respond before lunch. What does it mean if she wins? In theory, nothing you are not already doing. In practice, it gives her permission to harass you under the banner of Potson protection. We will not let that stand. We did not. Simmons from Family Defense drafted a response that read like a scalpel, clean, precise, designed to leave the least scar. The hearing was scheduled for that afternoon in a courtroom that tries to look like any other municipal room but cannot hide the way. Decisions echo longer here than anywhere else. I sat on a wooden bench whose varnish had seen more fear than church pews. Lucas sat behind me because we agreed optics mattered. He wanted to be present without taking the seat that belonged to my counsel. Daphne sat across the aisle, immaculate in navy, a pearl at her throat that looked like a period at the end of a sentence she intended to write over me. The judge, a woman with hair like a flag and glasses that took nobody's lies, read both filings as if they were short stories with bad prose. Ms. Anson, she said finally, the petitioner claims that you have placed children at risk by inviting media attention. I have repeatedly refused to name my children or permit their images to be used, I said. The attention came to my door because someone orchestrated it. I am trying to keep it from breaking the hinges. And the statement at the gala was about money and governance, I said, not about children. The judge turned to Daphne. Ms. Anson, the other, she said dryly, this appears to be less about protecting minors and more about protecting narratives. Daphne's lawyer performed a performance about duty of care and public interest, while carefully never saying the words jealousy or succession. The judge held up a hand and the room stilled. Here is my order, she said. Ms. Eden Anson will continue to refrain from using her children's names and images publicly. The foundation will refrain from referencing minors in any publicity. The petitioner will cease and desist from initiating press contact related to this family. Violation by either party will be sanctioned. We are not doing this. Not on my docket. The gavel found wood with the sweetness of percussion. Outside the courtroom, the press waited, because the press always waits where doors become plots. Aaron moved like a chess piece, blocking, redirecting, smiling with teeth that meant no Ortiz, slid the car to the curb as if the city had parted for him. Lucas opened the back door and asked, Not demanded? Home? Home, I said. Then school pickup, he said. I want to be there when they run out the door. They do not run, I said. They stampede. I want to be stampeded, he said. That night, the house was warm because the heater had decided to remember its job. A casserole appeared from a neighbor named Agatha, who watches the kids when my day falls apart. It tasted like onions and forgiveness. We ate like field workers. The kids telling Lucas a story about a class pet that had briefly escaped and been recaptured near a desk. Pencil sharpener. He laughed like a man who had not laughed properly in years. He washed dishes because hands need to do something after days like this. After bedtime, we stood in the hallway, lined with construction paper hearts and grocery lists that do not apologize. I do not know how to do this part, he said. There is no deck, No precedent, no acceptable loss. There is showing up, I said. There is learning the names of their stuffed animals, and liking the right cartoons, and hearing the difference between tired and hungry, he nodded, the kind of nod that makes promises to the body that will have to keep them. I can do morning, he said. I can do middle of the night. You did both last night, I said. Do it when there is no crisis, I added. He smiled. Not broad, but real. Tomorrow's crisis is a science fair volcano. He said, baking soda and vinegar. Add dish soap, I said. It makes the foam prettier. Noted, he said. The week moved like a sequence of narrow victories and loud defeats. The board leaked a story about internal review that tried to sound responsible and instead sounded like a hedge. We responded with photos of hands at work and receipts stamped, paid. Daphne pivoted to a philanthropic breakfast where she talked about truth, and a microphone caught her, referring to the pilot as craft therapy, which made 3 donors rescind 2 commas worth of money. Erin sent me the email subject lines with a quiet, vicious joy. Donor class hates to be condescended to, she wrote. News at 11. The eviction fight ripened into a standoff. Our landlord showed up in person for the first time in weeks, holding his cap-like contrition. They offered me a buyout. I could not refuse. He said, ashamed. I thought maybe I could do the work on the quiet, keep you upstairs, he added. Ridiculous and sad. You can't renovate half a building, I said gently. But you can delay the work and pretend to have permits, Erin said, peering from the stairwell like an indictment in boots. And you can definitely not forge your tenant's signature on a consent form. I have already reported it. Kindly revert to the legal path. He looked between us like a man trapped between debt and dignity. I am sorry, he said. Be better, I said. It pays longer. One evening, after a day of clean winds and dirty rumors, the buzzer sounded, and a courier handed me a slim box addressed in a hand that looked like a man relearning it. Inside lay a cufflink. Just one. A note. I do not need a pair to remember. Keep this where the ring sleeps until the day they ask us for the story. L. I sat with it in my palm until the metal warmed. I tucked it into the tin beside the ring, closed the lid, and felt the quiet thud of a door not yet ready to open. If you are still with me, if you are still asking whether all this is survival or beginning, consider the Tuesday when the science fair volcano erupted so vigorously that vinegar scented the hallway, and the twins laughed so hard they hiccuped. Consider Lucas on his knees with a sponge, learning that kitchen disasters are not disasters when the people you love are laughing. Consider June presenting her poster on ecosystems with the ferocity of a senator and Lucas clapping like an electorate. Consider a city that never apologizes for being difficult and the small spaces inside it that sometimes do. The world, obligingly, tried to break our streak. One morning, a story appeared on a site that feeds on the fattest prey. Anonymous sources claimed misuse of funds, implying I had been paid for consulting. I did not do. The invoices were public. The hours logged. The story did not care. Erin convened the equivalent of a war room. We can refute in 2 moves, she said. But they are trying to file smoke so they can point at it and call it fire. What is the second move? I asked. We flood the zone with truth, she said. Makers, products, outcomes, receipts. We push photos of the storefront, not as a sob story, but as a shop that sells warmth. We put the pilot's online catalog live. It is not ready, I said. It is ready enough, she said. Perfection is for museums. We are trying to heat apartments. The catalog went live at noon. By 5, we had orders from zip codes that never say our zip code out loud. By 7, a columnist who had mocked me last week wrote a paragraph about efficiency meets ethics, and I laughed in spite of myself. And then the phone rang, a number I knew because my childhood knows it. Eden, my grandfather said. Come to the house. No, I said. Silence. Then a surprising sentence, please. The house smelled the way rich houses smell when they are old, and people still live in them. Wax and ghost and a kind of tired that never learned to be humble. He sat in a room I was not allowed to sit in as a child. His hands thinner. His eyes the same blue that the twins wear when they are stubborn. You used to play here, he said, looking at a chessboard I never touched. Not in this room, I said. No, he admitted. I have spent a lifetime in rooms where I kept the wrong people out. You called Daphne the right person, I said. She knows what a legacy looks like. She knows what a photo looks like, I said. He grimaced, not at me, at something behind me, only he could see. I built a name, he said. I forgot to build a home. You can still try, I said, unsure why I said it. He stared at his hands. You made me feel small the other night, he said. On my own stage. You built the stage, I said. You invited the wrong play. He nodded once. I can make the eviction go away. It will go away because it is illegal, I said. But thank you for thinking of fixing something you broke. He blinked, surprised at the lack of sarcasm. You sound like your mother, he said again. But this time it was not an insult. She hated my parties. She hated being asked to perform gratitude. You never did, he said, and there was a ghost of a smile in it. You were always difficult. I was always alive, I said. That is inconvenient. For men like me, he said. Yes. He leaned back, looked at the ceiling, as if it might answer. Tell me what you need. I need you to stop using children as chess pieces, I said. I need the foundation to do what the brochure says. I need you to tell Daphne to stand down. She won't, he said. She thinks she can outlast you. She might, I said. But she won't outlast Winter. The program will. He closed his eyes a moment, then opened them with a decision in them I recognized from boardrooms and funerals. I will put it in writing, he said. The pilot is firewalled for a year. A genuine external audit. No public commentary on minors. As for Daphne, he paused. I will speak to her. She does not listen to you, I said. She listens to front pages. I used to be a front page, he said softly. Now I am an inside obituary waiting to be filled. For a second, I saw him, not the man who had exiled me with silence, but the boy who had believed money could shape weather, grown old, waiting for the storm to thank him. You can still choose who you are in the last paragraph, I said. He signed something while I watched, a legal faith enacted with ink. I pocketed the copy and walked out of the museum of us into a night that smelled like the beginnings of thaw. The thaw did not reach Daphne. The next day, she hosted a luncheon where she styled herself as the city's conscience and the program as an indulgence. 2 hours later, a video surfaced someone's phone. Someone's righteousness of her calling one of our makers quaint. The internet. A creature with many teeth. Bit down. Donors rescinded in public. A board member texted Erin do something, and Erin responded. She did it to herself. Then came the last move of the day, the one I did not see until it was on my table like a knife, a certified letter from a firm that did not represent my grandfather, did not represent the foundation, did not represent any past I could name. It represented a coalition of concerned citizens petitioning family court to appoint a guardian ad litem to review the welfare of the minors, reportedly related to Mr. North, alleging potential instability stemming from media exposure and recent public acknowledgement of paternity. Amar Roche's coalition is what cowards call themselves when they hide behind stationery. I sat down. Then I stood up, because sitting felt like surrender. I called Aaron, and while it rang, I looked at the science fair volcano on the counter and thought, they will not take what laughs in my kitchen. Aaron answered on the second ring. We will end this, she said, even before I finished. We will end it loudly. How? We turn the spotlight back? She said. We call a press conference? On our terms, with our counsel, on courthouse steps if we have to. We say we will fight any attempt to weaponize the courts against mothers and children. We say the coalition should show their faces if they intend to touch our lives. That makes us louder, I said. Sometimes the only way through noise is to be the only clear sound. She said, also, judges are people. They read the room before they read the brief. And Lucas, he will stand there, she said. If he does not, I will superglue him to the podium. I will text him, I said. Text Ortiz, she said. He is better at logistics. Lucas can practice not over-talking. The next afternoon, the courthouse steps were a geometry of microphones and coats. The wind held its own press conference. I wore the wool that earns its keep. Aaron opened with the force of a person who reads statutes as bedtime stories. Simmons followed, shaping the law into a shield whose edges were etiquette. Then I stepped forward, not to relitigate my life, but to refuse permission to have it taken. There are people hiding behind a phrase tonight, I said. Coalition. Concerned. Citizens. I am a citizen. My concern is for my children, not your optics. If you want to discuss welfare, come to our kitchen and fold laundry. If you want to discuss stability, sit with me at 2 a.m. when the radiator forgets how to be warm. Otherwise, leave the courts for what they are for, justice, not theater. The microphones wanted more. I did not give them more. I stepped back. That is when Lucas stepped forward, not to save me, but to add weight to the structure I had built. I will not allow my name to be used as a weapon against the mother of my children, he said. I will not tolerate legal harassment dressed as civic virtue. We will meet every filing with fact. We will meet every innuendo with silence. And we will raise our children out of the spotlight you are trying to drag them into. Questions flew. We gave none answers. Aaron ended the conference with the prosecutorial courtesy that makes reporters love and hate her. We started down the steps. It should have ended there. It did not. A woman to my left lost her footing on ice. A small skid that turned into a fall, and the crowd moved like flinching water. I reached, caught her elbow, steadied a stranger, because that is what we do while our lives are devoured. The cameras caught that too, and for once I did not mind. In the swirl, a man brushed too close, a whisper that wanted to be menace. You won't win. I turned and saw no one. Ortiz had me by the shoulder a second later, steering me toward the car with a pressure that said both sorry and move. In the back seat, with the door closed on the city's open mouth, My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, or from a known one disguised as decency. Stand down, or we make this criminal. I typed back a single word. Try. We drove back to Ridgewood through a light snow that looked like the city, trying softness. At the apartment, the radiator did its best impression of a heart. I stood at the window and watched the street lamp halo the sidewalk. Behind me, the ring tin waited on the shelf, the cufflink resting beside it like a comma awaiting sentence. I thought of the coalition that hid behind envelopes, of Daphne behind glass, of my grandfather behind time, of Lucas behind a name he had to learn to carry without using it for gravity. I thought of June's question, a lifetime ago, on a bench. Do people get to choose who they marry? Here is a better question, one I want to ask you now, while the city considers its next move. When someone says they will take your life and turn it into a public service announcement, how loudly are you willing to be private? The buzzer sounded. Erin's voice crackled through. Open, she said. I have news that is either our salvation or Act V's first problem. I pressed the door and listened to her boots on the stairs and knew the next chapter was coming, whether we invited it or not. Erin came in with the weather in her hair and a folder under her arm that looked too thin to be bad. She dropped it on the table next to the crayons and the ring tin and said, We found the coalition. Who are they? I asked, expecting a list of names that would make me tired. 3 LLCS founded last month, she said, flipping pages. All roads lead to the same PO box, the same retainer card, the same billing address, a boutique firm Daphne has used before when she wants to look like a crowd. The petition is a puppet show. We can cut the strings. I sat down because sometimes victory makes your knees less reliable than fear. We can move to dismiss. We can move to dismiss with prejudice, she said, and we can file sanctions for abuse of process. Judges like it when you tidy their docket for them. Does this end it? This ends this, she said. She will try something else because she is built that way. But she just stepped in something with her name on it. What is the catch? We need one thing you hate, she said, wincing. A live statement. You, courthouse steps, again, say it once, end it, not a speech, 3 sentences. I will write them. Lucas will stand far enough away to look supportive and close enough to be counted. Simmons will cite case law at any camera that gets ideas. You think this works. I think clarity does, she said. And I think Daphne misread the room and mistook appetite for permission. The twins thundered in from their bedroom, as if to endorse appetite and permission both. June appeared a beat later, carrying her sketchbook, her face set like a small, unblinking verdict. Are we moving? She asked, without preface. Not today, I said. Maybe not ever. She considered that. Then put her sketchbook on the table and drew a door with a lock. Just in case, she said. We should still be able to leave when we want, not when someone says. The next morning, the courthouse steps were already half a rumor when we arrived. Erin placed me in a pocket of space where microphones could hear without turning my face into a landscape. Lucas stood behind me and 5 feet to the left, a geometry that had become fluent. Simmons flanked my right shoulder with the calm of a person who can recite the statute number for contempt in her sleep. I took the page Erin handed me and did not look at it. A so-called coalition tried to use the courts to frighten a family. I said, voice steady, we will not be frightened. We will not be distracted. We will not participate in theater when the law is for justice. I stepped back. Simmons stepped forward, cited case numbers like coordinates, and announced the motion to dismiss and the sanctions request. A reporter shouted a question about the DNA results, and I let the air answer. Nothing. Another asked whether there would be a wedding. Lucas did not look at me. He looked at the ground that makes men honest. There will be parenting, he said. That is the only answer you are owed. Back at the storefront, deliveries arrived like small, faithful boats. Boxes of yarn, a new sign that did not apologize for being cheerful, a bulletin board covered in workshop flyers, learning to darn, pricing for dignity, a bilingual class on pattern reading. We set up a corner where the kids of makers could build things while their adults built income. Aaron hung a framed copy of the Protective Order on a back wall, not for decor, but for nerve. The judge's clerk calendared the coalition hearing within 48 hours, which in city time means divine intervention. We walked into the room that afternoon with a briefcase full of receipts. Across the aisle, a lawyer I did not recognize tried to arrange his face into the expression of a public servant who'd stumbled into duty. It did not quite fit. The judge adjusted her glasses like a woman who intends to recognize a costume. This petition, she said, is a confection. Motion to dismiss with prejudice granted. Sanctions to be determined after supplemental briefing. Court is not your press office, counsel. Do not come back here with nonsense. The gavel's knock felt like a weather change. We exhaled like survivors and walked into the hallway with the restraint of people who know victory attracts lightning. Erin squeezed my hand once. Go home, she said. Let me enjoy writing a sanctions memo. Lucas did not follow me out. He excused himself with a look that said bored and a voice that said bench. We were learning. At home, the building smelled like someone else's dinner and our own relief. I made pasta the way my mother did too much garlic, enough olive oil to make a point. June wrote a schedule for the evening and posted it on the fridge like a treaty. The twins argued over which planet gets to be leader and then agreed it was whichever one had the most room for snacks. We were halfway through dishes when the buzzer sounded and Ortiz's voice came. Through the speaker. Cackage. Not ticking. He rode up with a potted plant that looked indestructible and a card with no signature. The card said, "For the windowsill that keeps promises. A neighbor who cooks onions at dawn." I laughed until I remembered how to breathe and sent Ortiz home with half a pan of pasta. Because gratitude must become food when possible. The next blow came quiet. Aaron texted a single screenshot, a draft press release from the Foundation's chair, announcing a leadership transition and a pause for the pilot pending integration. Her message under it, not yet sent, drafted at Daphne's request. Fight now or bury later? I called. We fight now, I said. We learned what pauses are. Agreed, she said. I am walking into their office with a donor's signature and a threat of a donor's op-ed. Which donor? The one who hates being lied to on Tuesdays, she said. And today is very Tuesday. She went to war in heels and a cardigan, which is Aaron's version of armor. The statement that finally went out that evening did not include transition or pause. It included firewall and oversight, and a line that said the pilot remains a priority. It also included a smaller line at the bottom that read like a concession. Anson Foundation Board Vice Chair Daphne Anson will recuse herself from matters relating to the pilot during the review period. The internet read it the way it reads a courtroom sketch. Angry. The next morning, our eviction notice disappeared as if the paper had learned shame. A new letter took its place, signed this time, apologizing for the clerical error and offering a lease extension through the end of the school year at the current rate. Aaron texted a trophy emoji and then, "Do not trust. Verify." We verified. The deed transfer to the trust had been reversed. I do not know whether my grandfather's pen or his conscience signed it. I know the result. It is a strange thing when the floor stops moving. I spent the first peaceful day cleaning like good news is dust. Lucas showed up at 6 with grocery bags that were not flowers and therefore perfect. He put them down and said nothing until the kids swarmed and made silence impossible. He had learned to buy the cheap cereal that tastes like nostalgia and the expensive milk that tastes like milk. He had learned the brand of string cheese that does not peel in grief. He had learned my coffee and his coffee are different and both necessary. After bedtime, he stood by the window in the half-light that makes people honest and said, "I would like to talk to them." The word "them" came out like a prayer. He did not want to turn performative. About what? I asked, though I knew about who I am. Not to claim, to tell. That old fear moved under my ribs like an animal that thinks it has a right to live there. I looked at the mugs drying on the rack, the science fair volcano on the counter, the plant that had already declared itself sovereign. If we do this, I said, we do it here. No gifts, no cameras, no speeches. You use their names, not titles. You answer questions. You do not ask for hugs. I can do that, he said. Not tomorrow, I said, ridiculous and specific. Tomorrow is spelling. Thursday, he said. After school? Thursday came with rain, the honest kind that does not pretend to be cinematic. We made cocoa without marshmallows because marshmallows make truths too soft. The kids sat on the couch like a committee. Lucas sat on the ottoman like a witness called to testify. He looked at each of them, the way a person memorizes the exit map on a plane, and then hopes he never needs it. Noah, he said. Theo. June. Names like a starting line. I am Lucas. I am your mom's friend. I help with the store sometimes and with heaters when they forget their job. The twins grinned at that. And, he continued, slow like a man navigating a fog, he intends to leave. I am also your dad. Silence is not always empty. This one, filled with intake, with the sound of a pencil rolling across a coffee table, with a small clock deciding it would tick more quietly now. Theo, who negotiates facts like contracts, said, "Are you staying as much as your mom thinks is right?" he answered. What if she thinks? No, Noah asked. Practical as plumbing. Then I will stand outside the door and come back tomorrow, Lucas said. I will not leave if you do not want me to, and I will not stay if you do want me to. But your mom says, no, you live here. She runs the rules. June watched all of this with the expression of a person evaluating credibility. What is your favorite dinosaur? She asked. He blinked and then smiled because he knew a gait when he saw one. Stegosaurus. It looks like it should be slow, but it could probably surprise you when it needed to. Acceptable, she said, then added, "What is your favorite word?" He considered. Enough. June nodded, satisfied. The twins climbed off the couch like they would found a new game level and began to show him drawings as if his approval were data they could use. He did not kiss their heads. He did not cry. He let the moment be the size it needed to be. And then he washed the cocoa mugs, because sometimes love begins with dishes. The city, perhaps affronted by our domestic win, spun another wheel. Erin called from an unknown number because her phone had died under the weight of a day. "Daphne's going to move first," she said without hello. "We need to get out in front." For she is shopping a story that the pilot is a vanity project funneled through a shell vendor. Guess who? And that you are being paid above market for sub-market work. I laughed in a way that was not laughter. Market value for what? The rent I can pay because I breathe? We are not playing defense, she said. We are doing an audit reveal. We invite 3 reporters who can read. We hand them a binder. We give them access to the makers. We publish unit economics, materials, labor, margin, rent relief. We do it in the storefront with the women who turned yarn into electricity. They will try to turn it sentimental, I said. Then we make it boring, she said. Boring is invincible. The audit reveal looked like a classroom. Folding chairs, a flip chart, a binder with tabbed sections. Erin spoke in the grammar of receipts. The women who run the looms spoke like engineers. A reporter from a paper that does not do gossip asked a question about scale and heard an answer about capacity. Someone asked me what I get paid, and I told them, because shame requires secrecy, and we were fresh out. The story that ran the next morning showed hands and numbers, and a storefront light turned on. Daphne's attempt died on contact. We did not celebrate out loud. We bought a cake from a bakery that writes messages on sugar in any language you ask for and had them right on time, under budget. The kids ate slices large enough to count as policy. That evening, the phone rang in that specific way. A hospital phone rings in your memory, even when the hospital is a house. I answered, and my grandfather's voice came through as if he had borrowed humility and wanted to return it on time. I spoke to her, he said. She believes she is the custodian of something I built. She cannot see that she is burning it. Some fires look like light if you do not admit your eyes are tired, I said. I am making her step back, he said. If she does not, I will remove her. From the board. From my will, he said, and the sentence sounded like a man discovering he had rehung a painting and finally noticed it had been crooked for years. This is not about punishment, I said, surprising myself. It is about not teaching the city. We tolerate this. I do not know if I am teaching the city anymore, he said. I might just be teaching myself. That counts, I said. Maybe it counts most. The next day held no disasters. The radiator worked. The storefront sold out of marigold buttons by noon. The twins brought home a note from school praising their cooperative leadership, which means they took turns being loud. June came home with an index card that read Principal's Helper and the straight back of a person walking into their title. Lucas arrived with dish soap for volcano foam and let himself be sent to the corner store for eggs. Because we are out is a language. He was learning to speak with fluency. We were mid-omelet when Daphne appeared on my phone, not as a call, but as a headline. Anson Vice Chair steps back amid questions. Pilot program continues under new oversight. Her portrait sat under the words like a dare. The article did not come from a leak. It came from a release. She had written her own retreat and framed it as magnanimity. The last paragraph quoted a family source, saying she was focused on personal projects. The city read it as loss disguised as choice. I read it as a woman learning a lesson she would refuse to acknowledge until it became useful. We were not done. That is not how cities work. But some fights demote themselves from 5 alarms to inspections. The eviction was gone. The coalition had been dismissed. The pilot had a firewall. The board had a spine. Lucas had a bench that squeaked and a calendar with mornings in it. The kids had a man who showed up and then showed up again. There remained the matter of a ring in a tin and a cufflink, like a half-thought. One Sunday, after a morning that smelled like pancakes and crayons, we walked the bridge where I had first carried June's fever into the pharmacy light. The wind worked its way through our coats with familiar ambition. The kids ran ahead. Within the small distance, I allow the future. Lucas kept pace with me, not trying to choreograph the moment. When you talked at the gala, he said, you sounded like someone who had already decided how to live without anyone's permission. I had, I said. I still have, he nodded. Then I am asking a question that does not overrule that decision. He reached into his pocket and pulled out not a box, but the cufflink, bright as a promise that refuses velvet. I thought about a ring, he said. Then I thought about the day in the hotel when we pretended to be other people and gave each other objects that turned into coordinates. I do not want to pretend anymore. I want to be boring where it matters and brave where it counts. I want to do drop-off and leaky pipes and budget meetings that end with laughter. I want to be the person you call when the heater dies and when the science fair needs glitter. Marry me when you want. Do not when you do not. Let me build the life either way. I looked at the cuffs of his coat, at his hands that had learned new work, at the city that had learned nothing and everything at once. I took the cufflink and closed my fingers around it until it warmed. We do not do things because the city is watching, I said. We do them because the kitchen is. Then let us ask the kitchen, he said. We walked home. In the apartment, I took the tin from the cupboard and placed the ring and the cufflink side by side, not as an answer, as a conversation. The kids drew at the table, heads bent like little metronomes. I looked at them, then at him, then at the plant on the windowsill that had decided survival is organization. Yes, I said. The word felt smaller than the job it was given and big enough to lift it. Not this month, not in a ballroom, not with a magazine. In a room where the radiator works and the cake tastes like sugar and the vows fit in the space between dishes. He breathed out like a man who had been holding the world one-handed and could finally put it down. Okay, he said. Okay. He did not kneel because this was not a performance. He washed the mixing bowl. He asked Noah about his plan for Mars. He let Theo explain amortization for Halloween candy. He asked June to read him the policy for the warmth store and did not pretend to understand it when he did not. When the kids were asleep, I stood at the window and looked at a city that still believes weather is personality. Aaron texted a photo of the storefront's monthly report with a caption on time. under budget, with teeth. My grandfather sent a message that said, "I heard today that someone called me kind." I enjoyed it. Ortiz sent a photo of the squeaky bench with the caption reserved. The radiator hissed its approval. Lucas stood beside me and did not speak because he knows silence is a language I finally speak without fear. If you are waiting for the part where we marry under a canopy of perfect light, I won't give you that. We married on a Thursday at City Hall with 3 children as witnesses, and a neighbor who cooks onions at dawn, and Aaron who wore combat boots and mascara. Ortiz took one photo with his old phone because the moment asked for evidence and not for art. The ring and the cufflink sat in the tin at home, because some symbols are better as reliquaries than jewelry. We ate cake at the kitchen table. The frosting said policy achieved. We laughed until we cried, and then we cried until we laughed. Outside, New York continued not to care, and to care in the ways that matter. The crossing guard waved, the train ran mostly on time, the deli guy threw in the good pickles. In the store, women counted cash that turned into heat. In the foundation, oversight became habit. In our building, the heat worked more than it did not. On our windowsill, the plant refused to die. Once, late, when the kids had drifted into the kind of sleep that sounds like the softest yes. Lucas said, "If someone asked what saved us, what would you tell them?" I thought of the courthouse steps, the boardroom, the judge who did not tolerate theater, the winter that would not end and then did, the way we learned to speak boring as a shield, the fact of a man who showed up so many times that his showing up turned into a verb. "Locks you can open from the inside," I said. "Radiators that remember their jobs." And boring. He laughed into my hair. "God bless boring. The city will tell a different story if you let it." Ours is simpler. A family that learned to be private loudly. A storefront that sells warmth by the hour and dignity by the day. A woman who did not audition for a role that required her to disappear. A man who traded optics for mornings. 3 children who negotiated terms with the future and won. If you need a headline, use this. We lived here. We paid the heat. We stayed.